Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, for whenever you are viewing this clip. It is such an honor and a pleasure to bring to you yet another friend of mine. Lindsey is the owner of Ollie Vaughn's, which is a fantastic cafe and restaurant in downtown Phoenix. And she has been an advocate for community for, man, I think we've known each other 7 or 8 years, or 7 or 6 years now. And so you've always been about serving the community, not just as a restaurant owner, but also just as an advocate, as a friend, and all of that. And so it's such an honor to be here with you. Can you give us a brief, before I jump into the questions, can you just give us a brief introduction about who you are and where you're from and all that good stuff?
Sure. I'm Lindsey Magee and I own Ollie Vaughn's. And you're right, we've been open for 7 years this December, so I have known you that long. I am pretty much an Arizona native. I moved here when I was 5 from Oklahoma, so not that far away. And I'm a U of A Wildcat. I studied film there and film and television. And I ended up getting into food because I had a passion for creating community through food. So it was a life shift of mine around when I was about 27, 28 years old. I switched careers. So that's kind of my little brief introduction. I'm a mother of 2 young boys, and I have some stepchildren, and I'm married, and I live here in Phoenix, and my grandmother lives with me, and 2 dogs and a cat and a desert tortoise. And my grandma has a dog and a bird, so it's kind of like a zoo here.
That's good for the kids then. What is your tortoise's name and how old is it?
Roxy, and she is almost a year old, and we just put her outside this summer, so she has a little enclosure right behind me, and she's getting really big.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine. I have a couple friends that have tortoises. One that was even kidnapped and held for ransom, but that's a whole nother story. So, so here at the Beatitudes, we like to ask people, like we say that God is love. And so when somebody asks you that God is love, or how do you make love real, what exactly does that look like to you? Or how, when I asked you that question to prepare you for today, how would you answer that? What does that look like?
Well, a quick anecdote that I have that you just brought up for me was that when I was in 5th grade, I wrote God is love. I wrote it in Sharpie on my like bulletin board. Like I had a little cork board in my room, and I wrote God is love in one corner and Phoenix Suns in the other. I was like, that was like life for me. It's like, okay, God is love and basketball. So
Right.
it just like struck my mind. I was like, I know that phrase. And it was a realization that I had like at that age, um, so sorry, bring me back to the question again. So how do I embody that, or what was the question?
Yeah. So the question is, what exactly does love look like to you, or how do you answer, whether you believe in a traditional religious sense of God as love? Or
Right. Right. I definitely think love is putting others before yourself. I mean, at least that's kind of in romantic and familial love and in all those kind of ways. And even in like community service, it is about like, thinking of others before you and their needs and how you can be of service to them. And I think that's why I thought like that God is love made sense, was I felt that that kind of energy was there for me and not testing me, but like really presenting things in my life that I needed for growth, So it doesn't always mean like if you love someone, it doesn't mean you like throw yourself on the ground for them, like and just say, here you go, like whatever you need. But it's about like how can you like help people to on their path or grow spiritually and emotionally.
definitely. And, I'm going to throw a little curve in there, because the last time we got to finally see each other in person after, the start of all the COVID stuff, You mentioned boundaries as a kind of a sign of love. Do you mind elaborating very briefly on that? And perhaps we can talk about that in more detail later in the interview.
Sure. That's been something that has come up for me this year, and that's kind of a spiritual path that I'm on. And like I was saying, when things are presented to you for growth, and so God or that universal spirit has presented me with the challenge of boundaries this year, and I think part of it is being so close to my family and being at home so much with my family, like really learning to make sure that I take care of myself too. And I think it's like, especially for people, um, for parents, for people that are taking care of elderly family members, when you really, they do need you, they need me to do things for them to survive. But I have to make sure that I'm emotionally taken care of. And it's like the oxygen mask on the airplane. I always love that analogy. It's like, you have to put yours on first. And um, I can do with very little, but I don't want to be that way. And I think setting boundaries for other people helps them in their own growth. My children, my grandmother, my mom, just everybody. It's like, hey, this is how I like to take care of me. Maybe you can take some, lead from that and try it out for yourself.
Yes, amen to that one. Yeah, thank you so much. So how do you see you or what your business does that embodies making love real for the community, especially during this time?
Mm. Um, well, I think that initially, like when the pandemic started and we did the pivot into doing like a protected grocery order for people. I mean, that was I was not worried about my business. I own my building. I could close the doors, and I could have come home, and my husband who works at the hospital, he could have worked overtime and we would have been financially okay. But I think that the sense of service and love came in when I realized I had this like privilege of being able to access food as a restaurant. And that was something initially when the whole like toilet paper debacle was going on. People were very nervous about how and where they were going to get their food. And I realized, oh, I'm so lucky. I have a giant refrigerator. I have all this food. And then the first people that I thought of were my family. And then the second layer of people I thought of were my employees. And I'm like, hey, even if, you guys can't work and you don't have money, we do have this food and we have access to this food. And then I think the next leap was, and that's okay. That's kind of the boundary setting, right? You're like, am I okay? Is my family okay? Is my extended family okay? Okay, we're okay. Now, how can we extend this to other people?
Right.
How do we share the abundance that we have? But we had to make sure we were okay first, because you can't just start giving it all away and then you're starving.
Right. And then you're not able to give anything away at that point.
Right. You don't have anything to give. So I, I, I just, that was kind of our shift. And we're like, okay, we have something to offer people that initially, my business was about space and creating a space for community to gather and to share like their lives together in a public space, and then it's like, well, we can't have the space anymore, but what else can we give to people? And so I think in that way, it was like, it sort of the scariness and the fear drove us deeper into our service to people and to understanding our place in the community, which was like, I'm actually grateful for,
Yeah. Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, thank you, Lindsey, for this part one of our interview, and we'll continue this interview after just a moment. But for all of you visitors or church members or regular attendees, if you're interested in learning more, please go to our YouTube channel, go to our playlist of Making Love Real, and tune in for the second part. We're going to get much deeper into Lindsey's beauty and grace and love, and we look forward to seeing you momentarily.